Our first organizational strategy here is called hierarchies, and it's pretty much what you would expect. So a hierarchy is a collection of categorical variables that are nested from coarsest to finest. So the big idea here is if we're dealing with something like location, we might have region as our coarsest level of detail, country as our next level of detail, province as our next, or state, city, so on and so on and so on. So the big idea is that for each finer level of detail, we can only have one coarser level of detail. For instance, one country can only belong to one region. Each province can only belong to one country. Each city can only belong to one province, and so on and so on and so on. So in this way, we make kind of a pyramid with, or funnel or a chain or something like this, with the coarsest level of detail at the top and the finest level of detail at the bottom. So let's actually make one of those in Tableau. So here we have our world indicators data set, same as last time. And notice that already we have one of these. So we have, for instance, country region. So to make a hierarchy, I'm just going to drag country region onto region. So I can do it this way. And we'll call this thing location. And notice that I want region on top of country. So it's from the most coarse to the most fine. We can do it this way. Let me do it a slightly different way too. So if I go to region here and I say create, and the reason I'm doing this is because there's going to be plenty of other things here. And sorry, it's not create. Go down to hierarchy. We're going to be using create a lot, so that's why I'm going there already. Create hierarchy. We'll call it location. And then we drag country region into location. The nice part is we could put these in any order we want. Could reorder them later. It's no problem. Now, the point being that this location, which now has a new symbol here, a little kind of tree thingy, describing that hierarchy, is a variable that we can use. And in particular, it's a dimension that we can use in any way that we want, that we can normally use, except it's got some really cool stuff. So let's drag GDP to columns and CO2 emissions to rows. And we have our standard scatter plot. And we're going to drag location to detail. So this is where things get pretty cool, actually. And the reason they're cool is because notice I have a little plus symbol here. And the nice part about this is I can change the level of detail dynamically in this hierarchy by blowing the hierarchy up to the country region level of detail or condensing it down into the region level of detail. And I can confirm that this is happening if I look at the data itself. So here, for instance, I'll look at Asia. I'll look at the data. And I can see in this particular case that it contains all of the different countries: Afghanistan, Armenia, Azerbaijan, so on and so forth. If I expand the level of detail out, however, and I look at China, for instance, and look at its data, notice that I only see data from China here. So I've actually changed the level of detail of the view dynamically. This is really, really interesting and allows, because one of the things that you have to avoid if you can is overwhelming the viewer right off the bat. So often having these drill downs where users can engage with the data kind of at a broad level, kind of at a high level, or drill down into the details if they so choose, can be really, really useful. And we might, for instance, want to spice this up or kind of make it more informative by dragging region onto color. Notice that this is preserved even if I go down to this lower level of detail, more granular. For instance, Russia, like all the European countries are red. Sorry, my face is in the way. Asian countries are orange. And this is true regardless of which level of the view I'm at. So if I'm looking at level of detail at region, then I have the colors. And if I expand it out, those colors are preserved at the lower level of detail as well. The more granular level of detail. So again, it can be helpful. This drill down can be helpful to allow users to dynamically change the level of detail of the view so that they are not overwhelmed but can check out the details if they want. Hierarchies are just one way to do this. And oftentimes I'll point out too that if we look at year, for instance, and this is not true in this data set, but oftentimes Tableau interprets year or any date time as a hierarchy to begin with, because if you have, for instance, daily sales data or something like this, there's a natural hierarchy from years to quarters to months to weeks to days. And that is a completely natural hierarchy that's built into the date time by its very nature. In this particular data set, we only have yearly data, and so the hierarchy isn't very interesting. But in many, many, many cases, the natural hierarchy in a date time object can be really useful for kind of driving insights right off the bat.